Krennic had been engineered for war, its muscles dense with biofiber, senses honed to detect the faintest movement, and loyalty programmed to serve the Zarek without question. But in the end, none of that mattered. When Krennic was hit during the last battle, its Zarek handlers gave it one cold glance before boarding their transport ships. They didn't even acknowledge the beast's injuries. The directive had been clear: leave behind anything that couldn't keep up. The Zarek always adhered to efficiency over compassion. As Krennic lay on the scorched earth, the thick smoke of the battlefield clogging its lungs, the creature's sharp instincts kicked in. It struggled to push itself up, but its hind leg, now mangled from shrapnel, refused to bear its weight. Every breath was labored, each one more painful than the last. Krennic's glowing yellow eyes scanned the chaotic horizon. Destruction stretched for miles. Once a vibrant planet teeming with life, the land was now charred and lifeless, a testament to the Zarek's ruthless campaign. But Krennic didn't understand the larger machinations of war. It only knew one thing: it had been abandoned. Betrayed by the very beings it had fought for its entire life. The Zarek's ships were mere dots in the sky now, leaving Krennic alone in this wasteland of ruin. For hours it lay there, licking its wounds in a futile attempt to stave off infection. Its mind, designed for combat and obedience, was filled with confusion. Why had its masters left? Why did it hurt so much? The creature was not meant to contemplate its existence. It was meant to fight. But now, with nothing to do but wait for the end, Krennic's mind wandered into unfamiliar territory: despair. Its survival instincts kicked in despite the odds. With a grunt of effort, Krennic began crawling, dragging its heavy body across the ground. Every inch of movement sent sharp jolts of pain through its body. It stopped frequently, muscles twitching in agony, but something deeper than programming forced it to continue. The creature's sense of smell, still sharp despite its injuries, picked up the faint scent of vegetation ahead, a small oasis amidst the destruction. If it could just reach that spot, maybe it could find water or shelter. Krennic's journey was slow, painful, and filled with moments where it contemplated simply giving up. But the instinct to survive, however faint, kept it going. It was halfway to the small patch of greenery when a new scent reached its nostrils. Not Zarek. Something else. A scent unfamiliar but not immediately threatening. It lifted its head and strained its eyes to focus on the movement ahead. A group of figures approached from the horizon, moving cautiously through the debris. Their armor was unlike anything Krennic had seen before, lighter and more flexible than the Zarek's, and their weapons glowed with a different kind of energy. These were not Zarek soldiers. They were human. The creature growled low, pushing its body backward, trying to blend in with the terrain despite its massive form. Every instinct screamed at it to defend itself, but it was too weak to put up much of a fight. The humans were coming closer. The humans had been scouting the area for survivors. Their mission was simple: sweep through the remains of the battlefield, find any remaining Zarek forces, and assess if there were any valuable assets left behind. They hadn't expected to find a creature like Krennic. From a distance, they had spotted the war dog dragging itself through the debris, and now they approached cautiously. Unlike the Zarek, these humans didn't see the creature as a disposable weapon. Their leader, a man with years of experience dealing with alien species, had a different approach. He could see the pain in Krennic's eyes, the same kind of pain he'd seen in countless soldiers left behind to die. The team leader signaled for his squad to halt. He crouched down, observing the war dog closely. It was clearly bioengineered, and though it bore the marks of Zarek design, it was a living, breathing creature. Something about its condition struck a chord with him. This wasn't just a mindless beast; it had been left to suffer, discarded like a piece of malfunctioning equipment. And yet, it had fought to survive. "Look at it," one of the squad members whispered, his weapons still trained on Krennic. "That thing's dangerous." "Maybe," the leader replied, his eyes narrowing as he watched the war dog's labored breathing. "But it's not attacking us, is it? It's scared." "Scared?" another soldier scoffed. "It's a Zarek war dog. Those things don't feel fear." "Maybe they do," the leader murmured, stepping forward cautiously. He knelt a few feet from Krennic, his hands visible, showing he meant no harm. "Easy there, big guy. We're not here to hurt you." Krennic growled weakly, its instincts telling it to fight, but its body refused to obey. It was too exhausted, too injured to resist. The humans were close now, and Krennic could feel their strange, unfamiliar energy. They weren't like the Zarek. Their movements were careful, not mechanical. Their eyes showed something Krennic had never seen before: concern. The leader slowly reached into his pack, pulling out a small vial of water. He placed it on the ground between them and backed away, giving Krennic space. The war dog stared at the vial, its throat burning with thirst. Tentatively it stretched its neck forward, lapping up the water. It was cautious, but the humans made no sudden moves. "I don't like this," one of the soldiers muttered. "We should just leave it here." The leader shot him a look. "No one gets left behind. Not even this thing." The words meant nothing to Krennic, but the tone in the human's voice did. It was the opposite of the cold commands it had heard from the Zarek. These humans, they weren't treating it like a tool. They were treating it like a living being. For the first time in its life, Krennic felt something it had never known: trust. But it was fleeting, fragile. The humans were still a threat, and the war dog knew it had to be ready for anything. Yet, as the leader approached again, this time with medical supplies, Krennic didn't growl. It was too tired, too broken. For now, it would accept their help. The leader knelt beside Krennic, carefully treating its wounds. His hands moved quickly but gently, wrapping bandages around its injured leg and applying a healing salve to its cuts. The war dog flinched at first but soon relaxed under the human's care. It still didn't understand why these creatures were helping it, but it no longer felt the need to fight them. As the humans prepared to move on, the leader glanced back at Krennic. "We're not leaving you here," he said quietly. "You're coming with us." Krennic didn't understand the words, but it sensed the intent. These humans weren't abandoning it. They were taking it with them. And for the first time since its abandonment, Krennic felt a flicker of hope. The initial days were tense. Krennic, although alive and receiving treatment, wasn't exactly a willing patient. Every time the humans came near, its muscles tensed, its lips curled back into a snarl, and its sharp teeth flashed in warning. Even injured, Krennic still possessed an imposing presence. But the humans didn't give up. The team leader kept reminding his soldiers that this was no ordinary creature. The war dog's body was a testament to the Zarek's engineering, but there was something more, something in its eyes that suggested intelligence beyond its combat abilities. At first, Krennic didn't understand why they were helping it. Its survival instincts remained on high alert, ready to fight or flee at the first sign of danger. But the humans didn't approach with weapons drawn. Instead, they offered food. Small gestures at first, a ration pack placed carefully within its reach. Krennic hesitated for hours, unsure if this was a trap. But hunger eventually won over fear. The humans stood back, watching as the war dog cautiously sniffed the offering before finally devouring it. They continued this routine for several days, slowly building a sense of trust. Every time Krennic finished a meal, the humans would step a little closer. One of the medics, a woman with a gentle touch, made the first move to treat its wounds. She approached with calm, deliberate movements, giving Krennic no reason to panic. It still growled, still bared its teeth, but the humans didn't retreat. They didn't force the issue either, simply waiting for Krennic to tolerate their presence. Eventually, the creature allowed the woman to clean the gashes on its flank and rebandage its leg. It didn't make the process easy, but it no longer resisted as fiercely. As Krennic's body started to heal, something else changed. It began observing the humans more closely, its bright eyes watching their every move. Their behavior was unlike anything it had experienced before. They communicated constantly with one another, not through cold, detached commands, but with an ease that seemed familiar. Krennic didn't understand their words, but it could sense the warmth behind them. They cared about one another in a way the Zarek never had. This confused the war dog. In the past, the Zarek had treated it as nothing more than a tool. Its injuries had never been met with concern, only calculations about how long it could last before becoming useless. When it had failed in battle, there had been no hesitation in leaving it behind. The Zarek valued only efficiency, and Krennic's survival hadn't factored into their plans. But these humans were different. They didn't abandon their wounded. The team had taken Krennic, and despite the risks, it didn't make sense to the creature, yet it couldn't deny the reality of what was happening. With every passing day, Krennic felt its defenses weaken, not just physically but mentally. The humans didn't view it as expendable. They treated it with a level of respect, even kindness, that it had never known. It was strange to Krennic, feeling these new sensations. It had never experienced empathy before, and yet, somehow, the humans were stirring something inside it. One night, as they set up camp around the war dog, Krennic watched them share stories around a fire. Laughter echoed through the air, something Krennic had never heard in the Zarek's presence. The creature, lying on the ground nearby, felt a pang of something unfamiliar. Was it longing? It didn't understand, but it couldn't look away. The bond between Krennic and the humans grew steadily, though it was not without its challenges. Some members of the team remained wary, convinced that a war dog of Krennic's caliber was too dangerous to trust. "We're treating a ticking time bomb," one of the soldiers muttered under his breath. "You've seen what these things can do. What if it turns on us?" The leader didn't waver. "It hasn't attacked us yet. If it wanted to, it would have by now. We saved its life, and that means something." The medic chimed in, her tone firm. "It's injured, not stupid. You can see it's trying to figure us out. We're not Zarek, and I think it knows that." Despite the internal tension, the majority of the team agreed to continue aiding Krennic. They couldn't deny the creature's progress. Each day, it moved with more ease, the advanced medical technology helping its wounds heal faster than they expected. Krennic began to walk on its injured leg again, though it still limped noticeably. Its growls grew less frequent, and its eyes, once filled with hostility, softened ever so slightly. Krennic's memories of the Zarek haunted it during quiet moments. Flashbacks of brutal training sessions, where failure meant pain and obedience was enforced through fear, replayed in its mind. It had been conditioned to kill, to fight without question, to follow orders no matter the cost. But here, with the humans, Krennic wasn't being forced into anything. They didn't demand blind obedience. Instead, they asked for cooperation. They offered trust in return for trust, something the Zarek had never even considered. Slowly, Krennic began to respond in kind. It stayed closer to the humans, its posture more relaxed. It no longer saw them as a threat, but as something different. Krennic wasn't sure what to make of these new feelings, but it didn't resist them. The humans weren't its masters. They were something more, companions, perhaps. As Krennic's health improved, it became more active. One evening, while the humans were preparing their camp, Krennic moved closer to the group. It no longer growled at their presence, and even allowed one of the soldiers to brush a hand over its back, though the touch was brief and hesitant. This simple act felt monumental, both to the humans and to Krennic. The bond between them was no longer just a necessity for survival. It was becoming something genuine. Just when it seemed like things were settling into a routine, a signal came through the team's communication devices. The Zarek were coming back. A wave of unease washed over the camp. The humans exchanged worried glances. They knew that if the Zarek returned in force, they'd be in serious trouble. They didn't have the firepower or numbers to hold them off for long. The team leader turned to Krennic, his expression unreadable. "Looks like we're not out of the woods yet," he said softly. "But I'm betting you're not too keen on going back to them either." Krennic growled, but it wasn't a sound of fear or aggression. It was something else, a readiness, perhaps, a newfound loyalty. The war dog had made its choice. It would stand with the humans, no matter what came next. The signal from the Zarek ship confirmed what the humans had feared: the enemy was coming back. Their mission was clear: sweep through the planet, reclaim any lost technology, and erase any survivors. To them, Krennic was nothing more than a failed asset, a tool they'd discarded, and they wouldn't hesitate to eliminate it along with any lifeforms that got in their way. The human team, knowing that evacuation was no longer an option, began preparing for a fight. They had been trained for moments like this, outnumbered, outgunned, and forced to use every advantage they could find. The landscape offered some hope. The battle-ravaged planet, though desolate, had areas of cover they could use to create makeshift defenses. They moved quickly, setting up traps, blocking potential entry points, and positioning themselves to make the most of their limited resources. The tension was palpable, but no one panicked. They were soldiers, and they had faced impossible odds before. What made this different was Krennic. Fully healed now, the war dog stood with them, its massive form a reminder of the battles it had once fought for the Zarek. But this time, its stance was different. It wasn't just waiting for orders. Krennic was ready to fight, not as a weapon but as part of their team. The first wave of Zarek forces hit the planet with precision. They were methodical, emotionless in their approach, targeting anything that moved with brutal efficiency. Their ships hovered overhead, scanning for any signs of resistance, while ground forces moved in to secure key areas. To them, this was just another routine operation. They didn't expect the humans to put up much of a fight. After all, they had the advantage of superior technology and numbers. But the humans were prepared. They had used every second wisely, setting traps that would disrupt the Zarek's carefully calculated approach. Explosions rocked the ground as hidden mines detonated under the feet of the invaders, catching them off guard. The humans struck from behind cover, using guerrilla tactics to hit hard and retreat quickly. They knew they couldn't match the Zarek in a direct confrontation, so they used the environment to their advantage, forcing the enemy to chase them into unfavorable positions. Krennic proved to be an invaluable asset. Its bioengineered strength and speed allowed it to move through the battlefield with lethal efficiency. The war dog's instincts, once sharpened by the Zarek for combat, now served the humans. It attacked without hesitation, its powerful jaws tearing through the enemy forces with precision. The humans had seen Krennic's capabilities before, but now they witnessed something different: loyalty. The creature wasn't fighting because it had to. It was fighting to protect them. As the battle raged on, the bond between Krennic and the team grew even stronger. In a critical moment, the team leader found himself pinned down by enemy fire. The Zarek had zeroed in on his position, their weapons trained on him with deadly accuracy. There was no way out. But before the fatal shots could land, Krennic charged into the fray, its massive body acting as a shield. It tackled the Zarek soldiers with such force that they were sent flying, their weapons scattering uselessly to the ground. The team leader stared in disbelief for a moment before realizing what had just happened. Krennic had saved his life. The war dog's eyes met the leader's for a brief second, and in that moment, there was an understanding. Krennic no longer saw the humans as just another faction in this endless war. These weren't temporary allies or caretakers. They were its pack now, and it would fight to protect them at all costs. But the Zarek weren't deterred by the loss of a few soldiers. Their ruthlessness knew no bounds. They didn't pause to mourn their fallen or reconsider their strategy. To them, this was nothing more than a calculation. Lives were expendable, and as long as they achieved their objectives, it didn't matter how many bodies they left behind. The Zarek pressed on, destroying everything in their path with cold efficiency. Their ships rained down fire from above, obliterating entire sections of the battlefield, while ground forces continued their relentless assault. The humans, though skilled and resourceful, were beginning to feel the strain. Their ammunition was running low, and the Zarek forces seemed endless. Each wave was stronger than the last, and the team's defensive position was weakening. The leader could see the toll it was taking on his soldiers. They were tired, battered, and outnumbered. But they held the line, knowing that giving up wasn't an option. Just as the humans and Krennic seemed to be gaining the upper hand, the Zarek unleashed their most dangerous weapon, an elite assassin unit. These weren't just soldiers. They were specifically designed to neutralize rogue war beasts like Krennic. The Zarek knew that their creation had turned against them, and they weren't going to let it escape unpunished. The assassins moved with terrifying precision. Their armor was sleek, built for speed and stealth, and their weapons were designed to incapacitate rather than kill. They had one target in mind: Krennic. The war dog, sensing the shift in the battle, turned its attention to the new threat. These assassins weren't like the others. They knew how to fight creatures like Krennic. They had been trained for this exact scenario. The humans quickly realized that they were outmatched. The assassins moved faster than anything they had encountered before, their strikes almost too quick to follow. Krennic fought back with everything it had, but even its immense strength was being tested. The war dog took hit after hit, its bioengineered body absorbing the blows, but the assassins were relentless. They were systematically breaking it down, targeting its weak points with ruthless efficiency. The team leader, seeing Krennic struggle, rallied his soldiers for one last stand. They couldn't let the Zarek take Krennic. The war dog had saved them, and now it was their turn to return the favor. The humans fought with renewed determination, using every last bit of ammunition and strength they had left. They knew they couldn't win this fight through brute force alone. They had to outthink the enemy. As the battle reached its peak, Krennic, battered but not broken, stood its ground. The war dog's loyalty to the humans had transformed it from a mere weapon into something far more powerful, a protector. But the odds were stacked against them. The humans and Krennic were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy that wouldn't stop until they were all eliminated. And just as it seemed like the battle was lost, the leader made a desperate decision. They couldn't win through conventional means. The only chance they had was to turn the Zarek's own technology against them. The elite assassins moved like shadows, precise and relentless. Their sole mission was to eliminate Krennic, and they had been designed for this purpose. Their weapons were specialized to neutralize war beasts, striking at vulnerabilities with unerring accuracy. Krennic, already exhausted from the ongoing battle, was now facing an enemy that had been created specifically to destroy it. Yet despite the odds, the war dog did not back down. This was no longer about survival alone. Krennic was fighting for something greater, something it hadn't fully understood before: loyalty. The humans, seeing the assassin unit close in, knew they had little chance of surviving this encounter if they fought the enemy head-on. The assassins were faster, more agile, and far better equipped. But the humans had something the Zarek didn't account for: adaptability. They quickly regrouped, using their terrain knowledge and remaining resources to set traps and create distractions. The goal was simple: buy Krennic time to recover, regroup, and strike back. The battle was brutal. The assassins darted in and out of cover, moving with deadly precision. Each strike they made seemed to be calculated to cause maximum damage with minimal effort. Several human soldiers fell in the initial exchange, their armor no match for the advanced weaponry of the assassins. But even in the face of death, the humans refused to retreat. They fought with a grim determination, knowing that Krennic was their only chance of evening the odds. Krennic, despite its injuries, fought alongside the humans with ferocity. Its bioengineered body, designed to withstand incredible amounts of damage, endured the punishment the assassins dealt. But it wasn't invincible, and the wounds it had sustained in the earlier fight were beginning to slow it down. Still, every time one of the assassins came too close to the human soldiers, Krennic would charge, using its sheer size and strength to disrupt their formation. As the battle raged on, it became clear that this was a fight not just for survival, but for something deeper. The bond between Krennic and the humans had grown into something unbreakable. The war dog was no longer just a tool of destruction. It had become part of their team, and the humans fought with the knowledge that they couldn't let Krennic fall. In one particularly harrowing moment, the team leader found himself cornered by two assassins, their blades flashing in the dim light of the battlefield. There was no escape. But before the fatal blow could land, Krennic lunged from the side, crashing into one of the assassins with a force that sent it sprawling. The other assassin turned its attention to Krennic, but the war dog was faster, biting down hard on the assassin's arm and disarming it in one swift motion. The leader took the opportunity to strike, finishing off the disarmed assassin with a well-placed shot. He turned to Krennic, his eyes meeting the war dog's. "Good job," he muttered under his breath, a rare moment of quiet amidst the chaos. Krennic, panting heavily, gave a low growl of acknowledgement. There was no time for rest. The battle was far from over. As the assassins regrouped, their leader stepped forward, taller and more imposing than the others. This assassin had been designed for command, its armor thicker, its weapons deadlier. It spoke in a cold, mechanical voice, addressing both the humans and Krennic. You cannot win. No species has ever defied the Zarek and survived. You are nothing more than a distraction, a failed experiment. This ends now. The team leader gritted his teeth. We've heard that before, he shot back. He knew that this assassin wasn't bluffing. The Zarek had conquered countless worlds, enslaved entire species, and wiped out any resistance without a second thought. But the humans had something that the Zarek couldn't understand, an unyielding spirit. They didn't fight because they were programmed to. They fought because they believed in each other, and now, that included Krennic. The final showdown began, and it was clear this would be a fight to the death. The assassin leader was faster and stronger than anything they had faced so far. Every move it made was precise, calculated to bring maximum harm. Krennic charged again, its massive form colliding with the assassin in a bone-rattling impact, but the assassin was ready. It sidestepped the attack and slashed at Krennic's side, cutting deep into the war dog's flank. Krennic let out a howl of pain but didn't back down. It turned on the assassin with renewed fury, its powerful jaws snapping at the enemy's armor. The humans, seeing their opportunity, launched their final attack. The leader, alongside his remaining soldiers, fired everything they had, focusing their shots on the assassin's weaker points. But the assassin was relentless, shrugging off most of the damage and continuing its assault on Krennic. Just when it seemed like Krennic would fall, the team leader made a bold move. He sprinted toward the assassin, drawing its attention for just a moment. That was all Krennic needed. With a burst of strength, the war dog leaped onto the assassin, sinking its teeth into the weak point in its neck. The assassin struggled, but Krennic's grip was unbreakable. The leader fired one last shot, striking the assassin in the head and ending the fight. The battlefield fell silent. The Zarek forces, seeing their leader defeated, retreated, unwilling to continue the fight without their command unit. The humans and Krennic stood victorious, though battered and bloodied. The team leader knelt beside Krennic, gently patting the war dog's head. We made it, he said quietly, a rare smile crossing his face. Krennic, exhausted but alive, leaned into the touch. The battle had been won, but the cost had been high. Several of the team's members had fallen, and those who remained were injured and weary. But they had done the impossible. They had faced the Zarek's deadliest warriors and survived. Krennic, once a tool of war, was now part of something much greater. In the aftermath of the battle, the humans treated their wounded and began preparing to leave the planet. Krennic, though injured, stayed close to the team, watching over them with a protective gaze. The war dog was no longer just a weapon. It was part of their pack, and the bond between them was stronger than ever. As they prepared to leave, the leader looked out at the desolate landscape. The Zarek would not stop. They would return, and when they did, it would be with greater force. But for now, they had won, and they had something the Zarek could never take away, each other. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: Krennic and the humans were no longer just allies in war. They were family, and together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead.